The failure to act with sufficient ambition to avert the climate catastrophe will be the greatest moral failure of our time.
Making changes takes courage, and if we don't change things, we won't have a future.
I'm an environmentalist. A lot of people don't understand that. I think I know more about the environment than most people.
You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. Change is coming, whether you like it or not.
Zero Carbon
East Off. Hello and welcome to Zero Carbonista Series 2, The Manifesto. I'm Ian Collins, and it wouldn't be unreasonable to say this is about the only place you will find a discussion on environmental issues that cuts through the guff and gets to the core of the story and gives you some pretty straightforward opinion on all matters green along the way. And a brief explainer about the DNA of the podcast. The series follows the opinions, initiatives and ideas of Dale Vince, the entrepreneur and environmentalist. He built his success in the green energy sector. He's the owner of Ecotricity, the world's first green energy company. Also happens to be the chairman of Forest Green Rovers. Dale, morning to you.
Yeah, morning, Ian. Loving the intro. Made me laugh. I didn't know the word guff existed outside of Norfolk. That's where I last heard it.
Is that a Norfolk word? Is that a Norfolk word?
It lives in Norfolk. It must live other places too. Obviously lives in Kent.
Yeah, clearly found its way down the down
to the toilet of Britain.
Indeed, yes. We are coming ever closer to the outside loos of the M20. It's only a matter of time. Well, let's start then with our master.
This government is delivering a fantastic agenda in tackling climate change. We lead the world in going for a zero carbon approach.
And this, of course, follows the news today. The UK aiming to cut its carbon emissions by at least 68% of what they were in 1990 by the end of 2030. Dale, what's not to like? And I'm sure you're going to tell me there's something.
Well, I don't know, actually. I mean, on the face of it, it looks good. I don't know why they chose 68 and didn't round it to 70, because they've said at least anyway. It's not like a hard and fast number. You know, it's a broad target. Why not make it 70%? I haven't had the chance to look to see if that keeps us on track for Paris and stuff like that, but I suspect it might, or be close anyway. So I think, you know, it might represent a serious upscaling of ambition.
So that would be, hang on a second, let me get this right. This could be is this a Dale Vince endorsement of Boris Johnson?
Yeah, let me think about that for a second.
I think we might need a pint or two to think about that.
No, look, fair's fair. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to look at the detail, but if this is something that gets us even close to keeping up with our Paris trajectory, then I say fair play. Obviously, The devil is in the delivery. It's okay to say this stuff, but we've got to actually make it happen. And so far, we haven't seen the policy to back up the targets, any of the targets from this government. But I like the target. I can say that.
Yeah, I mean, scientists have welcomed the news, but they did say that it doesn't actually guarantee that dangerous climate change will be avoided. And it's the jigsaw puzzle, isn't it? I mean, this one part of it, etc.
Hot air doesn't fight hot air, does it?
Yeah, indeed. We will watch with interest. Here's a question that comes from Pete on Twitter. You're saying the government should have funded football. It's a rich man's sport, says Pete.
I don't think
that was a crunching gear change, wasn't it? Straight from that to football.
Yeah, I don't think football is a rich man's sport. I think it's not that, is it? I think you could argue that horse racing is a rich man's sport. You could say the same about rugby, but I don't think it would be true in the case of football or rugby. Even horse racing. The people that watch horse racing are not rich people per se. Yeah. Maybe the people that own the horses are, and the people that own the Premier League clubs are. So I get that. But my point was that the government have funded an awful lot. I mean, almost every sector of our society, certainly our economy, that has suffered through pandemic restrictions, all businesses, have had some kind of support or another, and sports have had. I mean, last week, 40 million was given to horse racing, 135 million was given to rugby. We saw 500 million given to pubs in August, 1.5 billion to the arts, and hundreds of billions of soft loans from the government, as well as grants to all sectors of the economy, but nothing, absolutely nothing to football. And what I'm saying is, why is that? Why is football treated exceptionally by this government? I think they have a problem with football, and I think it's a Margaret Rashford-linked problem. I think they're upset that they were embarrassed into 2 U-turns around feeding hungry children in school holidays by a footballer, and I think they hold resentment towards the sport.
You think that's the catalyst there?
Like-
It's a kind of almost a payback for chronic embarrassment to the PM.
Well, I can't think of another reason. I think they need to tell us the reason, because there is no other industry or area of our economy that is being treated like football. From the get-go, they've said the Premier League should support the EFL and the football pyramid. They haven't said that the supermarkets should support the corner shops. They've given football nothing. They've given the supermarkets well over £1 billion in rate relief, which they're now giving back so they can pay hundreds of millions in dividends. But they haven't said they should support corner shops or high streets. They haven't said Wetherspoon should support independent pubs, but they've had plenty of money from the government as well. But when it comes to football, they say the Premier League has money and therefore should give money to basically its industry fellows, if not competitors, when it comes to the championship. And it's just standout, unique treatment. And I don't understand why. I think they should tell us.
Yeah, that's not an unreasonable point, isn't it? But it's a bit like we talked the other day, didn't we, about non-petrol and diesel cars. It's the thing that gets the headlines, and the government know that you mention football, then that's the one that gets all the headlines.
Yeah, it could be so. But honestly, I don't understand it culturally, because the Premier League is an incredibly successful business. This is a conservative government that worship business and entrepreneurial skills and making money. The Premier League have done phenomenally well at that, and they put billions a year into our economy as a result. Why do the government dislike them so? I mean, the government's reaction to yesterday's announcement of the Premier League bunging money into the EFL was simply to say it took too long, and it means that football has a governance issue. What an incredible reaction.
Yeah, incredible. Let's move on to this. This is back to more environmental matters. The Earth continued to endure a period of significant heating in 2020. So it looks as if this year will be one of the three hottest. So 2016, 2019, 2020, the warmest 6 years in global records dating back to 1850, have now all occurred since 2015.
Yeah, amazing. And there will still be people out there, hopefully, probably not listening to this, or maybe I should hope they are listening to this, that think that climate change is not real. And even if it is not man-made, that it's a natural phenomena. But, the data just keeps saying something else. It keeps saying, no, actually not. It's an acute issue, and it's caused by human activity in the last 150 years, pretty much, since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and the mass burning of fossil fuels, as we get into in my book, Cue the Bugle.
And there it is. It's interesting. I heard you on Talk Radio in the week with Mike Graham, and it was a very affable chat.
Yeah.
And of course, Mike has been a bit sceptical about certain aspects, but I sensed you were winning him over.
Yeah, I sensed that as well. And you know what I like, Mike? It's a funny thing. When I first went on his show, I was slightly shocked. He was like full on rant mode at me, didn't give me a chance to speak, answer any questions, anything, And I was quite shocked. I said to him at the start of the show, you sound like a shock jock. And he said to me, I am a shock jock. But you know what? I really like him. And I have the same sense as you have there. I sent him a copy of my book, and I wrote in the cover, this could change your life, Mike, kind of smiley face. But, I think it could. And I actually go on his show. Some people say to me, what are you doing there? He's an awful man. He's got an awful audience, that kind of stuff. But my reason for being there is he's got a big audience of people that we absolutely need to engage with, because we've got to dispel these myths around the climate crisis, around what green living really means and all that kind of stuff. We need people like Mike and his listeners on board.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're a great bunch as well. So there you go. Here's one from Steve in Kent, who says, Dale and Ian, can you please move on from Trump? What, this man?
What I said the other night, there's never been anything where they have so many names. I could give you 19 or 20 names for that, right? It's got all different names. Wuhan, coronavirus, right? Kung flu,
Steve says, that man. Steve says he lost It's Old News. You're giving him too much airtime on this podcast. Do me a favor and remove him from the intro too.
Well, I think that's fair, Steve. If you're asking us to dump the Trump, then, I'm going to back that campaign. I'll have a chat to Ian off air, but I think you're right. His time is virtually past. I think come the end of the year, he really, pretty much January, he won't be the president. So I've got a feeling that intro might have maybe a Biden on there. Yeah, maybe. I mean, 14th of December, which is only about 10 days away, then the US election result becomes official, actually. And the handover is then just a matter of days, as you say. And he'll be history. But, I think we're going to pop back and visit him because I suspect he's going to face a series of legal challenges. And I do think he'll end up in jail. And that'll just be a little bit of fun.
I mean, that would be utterly extraordinary, wouldn't it, if an American president went to jail?
He is utterly extraordinary, though. I mean, he's a very special man. He continues even now to say the most incredible things and to try the most incredible things. Overturning the U.S. election, he's been trying in state courts that he packed with conservative judges. And I think just today there was a vote 4-3. One conservative judge didn't stick to, with the majority and refused to overturn the vote decision in Michigan, I think it was. Clearly there was a strategy here: pack the courts and then use them to overturn the election result 4 years later.
Yeah, but you've got mostly, there's a lot of Republican governors and politicians and former Republican presidents all saying, no, he lost.
Yeah, they're coming out of the woodwork now. It's taken them a long time, actually, to man up and say, do you know what, it was a fair election.
True.
and this man lost. But they kind of waited, didn't they, to see which way it was going to go.
True. Although I think, in fairness to George Bush, he was out the traps on day one because he can't stand Trump, so didn't even vote for him. So
yeah, quite right. But he's not a current politician.
That's true. Yeah.
But those that are, I think they waited to make sure they were on the winning side. Or the losing side, but before calling it as the losing side.
What do you make of this headline? This was from the New Scientist, and I spotted this, and I just thought, well, let me give you the headlines and get your response on this. Limiting global warming to 1.5 Celsius over pre-industrial levels is only possible if we make better use of the world's forests, which collectively act as a kind of huge carbon sink. What do you think we take from that?
Well, I think it's probably right. I think, there's an emerging body of evidence around that there is enough land in the world and tree planting, habitat creation is the most effective and cost-effective way to get carbon out of the atmosphere and store it up. And actually, when you combine that with the diet change that we have to make to move away from intensive animal farming, which is driving the climate crisis and driving the depletion of wildlife and habitat depletion as well. When you couple those together, when we go plant-based, we free up 75% of the world's farmland. In Britain, that means we free up 50% of our entire land mass. If we give that back to nature, we don't just create a more beautiful country to live in, we also create an enormous carbon sink that can help us to get to carbon zero. So I think it's a perfectly joined up puzzle. And of course, it's in the book.
It's in the book. There's that bugle again. This from Alice on Facebook, who says, random question, Dale. Have you got an electric coach for Forest Green to travel in?
Not yet. And it's been on our wish list since the beginning, really, since 2010 when we got involved with Forest Green. And we did think about making one at one point because we've got a bit of history in making electric things. But we decided it was a rather big project and we'd better just wait for the coach builders to come along. And they're coming. I think there are probably a couple of dozen electric buses in Britain right now, buses, not coaches. But in China, there are hundreds of thousands. And so the day when we have an electric coach can't be very far away. It's on our shopping list.
Yeah. What about horses?
Yeah, why not get us there in time?
Well, yeah, I mean, you'd have to leave early. I mean, I'm not disputing it might be leave on a Wednesday for a Saturday. I mean, depending on who you're playing, of course. But
yeah, I think actually horses are worse than lorry drivers when it comes to just pooing wherever they are.
Yeah, I was going to say there is that. I don't know how environmentally friendly a horse is if it's shitting all over the M1.
I read somewhere they've just been banned from a city. I think it was in Spain. I only read it this morning in a hurry. Horses have been banned. I don't know why, but I imagine it's something to do with pooing.
Just treat it as a roundabout, couldn't you, really? I guess there's that.
A mini roundabout.
A mini roundabout, yeah, depending on the nag. What about this as well? Landmark, a bit of a celebration, 15 years of the Reading wind turbine.
Yeah, quite nice. That's the one by the M4.
Yep.
Monster of a machine. I remember the day we built it. It's at Green Park in Reading, kind of right by the junction, 100 metres from the road, super visible.
So this is the first windmill?
No, it'd be our, let me count them up, 1, 2, 3, maybe fourth or something like that. I'm not really sure. But it's the most visible windmill in Britain. And I remember the day we built it, I drove down to Reading to take a look, and all 6 lanes of the M4, both sides, were slowed to a walking pace as everybody rubbernecked this massive windmill. And I was thinking, oh shit, what have we done? I hope there's not an accident. But there never has been, so that's okay.
That's brilliant. And for outsiders to this, what is that windmill, in layman's terms, Dale, what is that windmill doing?
I think we're talking about enough energy annually for maybe 1,500 homes or something like that. But the actual reason we put it there was because, at the time, and it won't be far off even now, 9 out of 10 people had never seen a windmill, and yet there was a lot of opposition based on myths around windmills. How they looked, how they sounded, that kind of stuff. And so we thought, Reading is not a great place for a windmill. It's not a very windy place, but let's stick a big windmill right by the M4. Let's put it where people can see it, because it will help us advance the planning discussion around onshore wind in Britain.
Good work. Final one from Ken on Twitter, who's a Mike Graham fan, says in brackets.
Me too.
Dale, how can you call yourself green if you've published a book? You have killed trees, says Ken.
Yes, Ken, but they were sustainable trees.
You're in the dock, Dale Vince. Come on. Yeah. You've killed the trees. Tell us about what's your defense for the tree cull.
They're sustainable trees. They're from FFC accredited sources. Every part of the book, the pages, the cover, the jacket is, I guess you'd call it renewable, because trees are replanted to replace the ones that are cut down. That's sustainable forestry for a sustainable paper. I mean, we have to avoid paper where we can, but books are a thing that people want. And to a degree, I think it's okay to have them.
Good work.
I was going to say this. I mean, there was some brilliant news this week. I haven't even had time to kind of do much about it, but the European Court in Strasbourg has taken up a challenge, a claim basically by some climate activists, some kids, against, I think, something like 27 countries, saying they aren't doing enough to fight the climate crisis. And they're fast-tracking this through the court because they recognize the urgency of it. And if they find in favor of the activists, then all of the countries that are under the governance of the Court of Human Rights will be forced to move faster and set harder, bigger targets on climate change, which is incredible. There's another move to bring in a law of ecocide. Again, this is happening in Europe. Shame that we're leaving, which is a crime against nature, basically, which I think is amazing. Shell are in the dock in Holland being accused of holding back the fight against climate change, having known about it for, I don't know, maybe 30 years or something. And they're facing some severe penalties if and when, I think it might be when, they get found guilty. Just a whole raft of great news. And it all appears to be on the legal front, actually, and it's all in Europe.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So, I mean, these could be absolute game changers and accelerating everything we tend to talk about on this podcast.
Yeah, totally.
Dale, that's it for this episode.
Nice one.
Have a cracking weekend. We'll speak next Friday.
Yeah, brilliant. Look forward to it, Ian.
Don't forget, of course, you can subscribe for free from your podcast provider so that you get each of these episodes automatically. We always like it if you leave a review there as well. It's rather handy. If you want to get in touch with us, you can email your comments and questions to zerocarboneaster@ecotricity.co.uk. And really important bit, make sure you follow Dale on social media, twitter.com/DaleVince or facebook.com/DaleVince.
Zero Carbon
East of